to remind ourselves why we're doing this, is because, particularly from our first study, if you remember the story of Zacchaeus, who took a tremendous risk by saying, half of what I have I'm going to give to the poor, and if I've defrauded anybody, I'll give them 4 times back the amount. And then the first 2 servants that took the nobleman's money, which he asked them to engage in business, and took incredible risk, one getting a 1,000% return on that money, and the other 500%, and the servant who got nothing, and even his nothing was taken away. We kind of got from that risks are important to our lives, increasingly so as we go older, and we tend to fend off risk. We actually should embrace it more. That's not crazy activity and jumping out of a plane without a parachute kind of risk, but although my mom jumped out of a plane when she was 68, she didn't have a parachute on. It was kind of fun. I was with her. Of course, I didn't jump out of the plane, but I said, "Oh, go ahead." No, I didn't. But it is so important to life because it grows our capacity and it grows our opportunity. And there is so much opportunity lost because people fail to take adequate, necessary risk in their life. And so, what shuts down? You never know what shuts down, but for many people, life just starts to shut down. Isolation begins to happen, and less people come into their lives, and they're home alone. It's pretty sad. So we want people to embrace risk, and that's why we're kind of thinking about that every week, what that's going to mean for us. And we'll talk more about that as the weeks go on. Tonight we've got a really interesting passage. I love this story. It's now, just to give a little context, Peter and Andrew and John and Simon, they're fishing partners, right? They fished the Sea of Galilee. You got the map in the back here. It's either called the Lake of Gennesaret, which is what Luke calls it. Interestingly enough, Luke is a physician, and we're reading out of Luke, by the way. And so he's much more precise with his language. But the Sea of Galilee is what the common folks called it. But it's actually the Lake of Gennesaret. Anyway, that's where their fishing business took place. And Peter's home is actually, and Andrew's home is in Capernaum, which is on the north side of the Sea of Galilee. So a lot of the story, not all of it actually, but a lot of the story happens there. And the fact is that this was a close-knit group of partners, fishing partners. Now, before we're introduced to them, though, we're introduced to the fact that Jesus was healing people, and one of the people that he healed was somebody quite important to Peter. Well, we think she was anyway. But I'm going to read the first part of this through the end of chapter 4, and then we're going to go to the video because it starts portraying it. We have 2 videos tonight of the same scene. I'm going to start with one that's more accurate. Then we're going to do, at the end of the evening, we're going to do one that's better produced but less accurate. And we'll just kind of evaluate them, what we think about the 2. I'll be just interested in how we think about the two different renditions of the same scene. So I'll read it first, and then when we get to chapter 5, verse 1, we'll go into the video. This is page 23. And he arose and left the synagogue and entered Simon's house. That's Peter. Now, Simon's mother-in-law was ill with a high fever. And they appealed to him on her behalf, and he stood over her and rebuked the fever. And it left her, and immediately she rose and began to serve them. Now when the sun was setting, all those who had any who were sick with various diseases brought them to him. And he laid his hands on every one of them and healed them. And demons also came out of many, crying, "You are the Son of God." But he rebuked them and would not allow them to speak because they knew that he was the Christ. Remember, Christ is the word for Messiah. And when it was day, he departed and went into a desolate place. And the people saw him and came to him and would have kept him from leaving them. But he said, "I must preach the good news of the kingdom of God to the other towns as well, for I was sent for this purpose." and he was preaching in the synagogues of Judea.
And came to Capernaum, a city of Galilee. The Roman occupation of the nation was in evidence everywhere, and the people longed for the Messiah to free them from the tyranny.
Peace be with you.
And you, Master?
Will your bow to bear me, Simon?
Why not?
Once there were two men who went up to the temple to pray. One was a Pharisee, the other a tax collector. The Pharisee stood apart by himself and prayed, "I thank you, God, that I am not greedy or dishonest or an adulterer like everybody else. I thank you that I am not like that tax collector over there. I fast twice a week, and I give you 1/10 of all my income." But the tax collector stood at a distance and would not even raise his face to heaven, but beat upon his breast and said, "God, have pity on me, a sinner." I tell you, the tax collector, not the Pharisee, was in the right with God when he went home. For the man who exalts himself will be humbled, and he who humbles himself will be exalted. Push the boat out further to the deep water. Then you and your partners let down your nets for a catch.
Oh, Master, we worked hard all night long and caught nothing. But if you say so, I'll let down the nets. James! John! James, John! Get your boat over and give us some help! We can't! Hurry! Our hands full. Fastly!
Work on the far end of the net. You don't overload this side. That's enough. That's enough!
Go away from me, Lord. I am a sinful man.
Don't be afraid. From now on, you will be catching men.
Okay, why don't you take 15 minutes and that part where he told about the Pharisee and the publican is not actually in the story, but he did teach. So when he started in chapter 5, he was. Let's go back to that spot. On one occasion, while the crowd was pressing in on him, hear the word of the Lord, and so forth. It goes from there. So, why don't you go ahead and take some time and study back through this, and then we'll meet in our groups to talk about it. Okay, why don't we go ahead and start discussing this section in our books. Okay, let's bring our thoughts together here. Bring our thoughts together. Whatever we're together. So there's kind of the first part is Simon's mother-in-law's kind of story, and then the next part goes on from there with this encounter with Peter. Well, let's look at the first part first. What did you see there? What kind of stood out to you? That was kind of interesting.
So I want to know who was they that appealed to him. And we decided it might could have been the disciples, because probably they came into Peter's house. But then on the other side of that, it might have been his wife and the family, the household that might have appealed to Jesus, because if Simon was with Jesus, he may not have known, he wouldn't have known how sick she was. The family definitely would have.
Yeah.
And, you know, grandma's very important. And so we were saying we need her to help so they could serve them and fix the food.
I decided it was the disciples. They're like, healer, man. We need her to get that cook for us.
You know, women look at this passage a lot.
We were looking at it. It probably wasn't Peter asking for a
I'll let Robert interpret the way Robert wants to interpret.
We know that Peter, James, and John weren't following Jesus yet, so it wasn't them in the sense of as disciples, but they might have heard of him without it. I mean, like
Yeah.
Peter might have.
Oh, interesting point.
So,
Yeah, they had definitely encountered Jesus before.
Right.
So they, yeah.
So they knew he was a healer.
him.
They knew he could perform miracles.
They knew about it. Yeah.
So was this the first time?
No, this isn't the first time they met Jesus.
Okay.
I can give you passages, I'll give you later if I want them, but there's a couple of different times that they initially met Jesus. As a matter of fact, Andrew was the one who introduced Peter to Jesus, and that was earlier than this, and then it was another occasion. So this is them kind of coming to some conclusions about Jesus personally, really, in this story.
So at this point, they're just kind of like groupies.
Something like that, yeah. The fishermen who have an interest in this rabbi.
Linda had a really good point that he's a hands-on God, that he put his hands on everyone and healed them. And then April had a really good point. You want to tell him?
I don't remember which one.
Oh, no, it was the demons had to obey him, right? Like they had to obey him. They had to leave and they had to obey, right? That's pretty cool.
Who were the demons? Were they spirits? Were they people?
What do we have here? So the demons also came out of many crying, "You're the Son of God," but he rebuked them and would not allow them to speak because they knew he was the Christ. So what do we get just from that one verse about who the demons are? What do you think? It's a good question.
Well, it sounds like they come out of people, they're not a person.
Yeah.
It's unclean spirit, right?
Yeah. There's some kind of entity that's not in a bodily form, right? And they can come out, they can go in it, I guess, as well, and inhabit somebody's life. It sounds like, I mean, this is only one verse, but it sounds like they are not something they want to have anywhere near you, obviously.
Could everybody else see these demons?
I don't know, they could hear them, I think. I don't know if they could see them or not. But
I imagine they could hear the person speaking as they were coming in.
yeah.
So, I think the voice of the person they were in, that they're coming out. So, came out, meaning, also came out, and then crying. So as they're coming
Yeah.
out.
That makes sense. Also, they have a certain amount of power over the person that they're in. They can manipulate their activities activities through that person, you know.
Yeah.
Small story. We were in India one time, and we were up on stage. People were standing up, sharing their testimony about how they'd come to Christ and what He'd been doing in their lives. And then off to the side, a gal came up the step and slinking up the steps. And obviously, she wasn't about to share her testimony. She was just demon possessed. And so one of the pastors said, just right now, get her off the stage. So Satan will use those kind of things to detract from Christ. We felt like she was up there trying to steal the stage from what was happening with Christ. And so they took her over to under the trees. They were praying over her, and Robert and I walked over there. And when we got there, she was still kind of in a real tense, her body was tense, she was real tense, and then the demon left her, and all of a sudden you just see her whole expression relax, her whole body relax, and she started crying. So they take over a person's whole body and just manipulate them. Not for good either.
I don't think many of us have had experiences that we have known anyway about that, but I've heard other people give that kind of experience.
From here, we can tell that they know things about the spiritual world that people who don't see, if they're seeing right into who Jesus is, where He's from.
Right.
You mean the demon? Oh.
And often, go ahead. Yeah. Well, often, if you know somebody's name, like if I came up to you and I'd never met you before, Mark, and I said, "Hey, Mark, Siri, how are you doing? How's your business going, Mark and Company?" Would you be a little bit set off by that if I?
With my memory, that was all.
Bad example.
That's funny.
That's a memory. But if somebody comes up and knows way too much information about you that you've never met, that's like, whoa, they kind of got power over you, don't they?
Yeah.
It's like, it's a little intimidating.
Yeah.
Well, these demons are wanting to intimidate Jesus, I think they have, and we've seen this from other stories, not just this one, but who are you, O Holy One of God? They use His name a lot. And here they use Christ as His Messiah. So it's like, we know who you are. We've got something over you. Okay? And He's will have none of that. He shuts them down right after that. Plus, remember from our study of the woman at the well, where He tells her only two people in all of the New Testament that He tells that He's the Messiah.
Yeah.
He tells Pilate in one gospel that in fact He is the Messiah. But it's like, He doesn't want people talking about it. And particularly not the dark world of the demonic spirits. He doesn't need their support, Okay, good. What else?
I was feeling like more could have been written about one thing. What is written? So what happened? Jesus rebuked the fever, and the mother-in-law is miraculously immediately well. Okay. Well, that obviously had an effect because it says everyone who knew anyone who was sick brought them, and He's doing the same thing. And I'm thinking we could easily have seen people's big reactions described, similar to Simon's reaction when he humbled himself and he's saying, "I'm a sinful man," and then chose to follow Christ. It sounds like, and well, of course, because reading the rest of the New Testament, but that to me is such a big deal. All those healings, and so anyway, I'm thinking there was a lot going on that maybe just it wasn't written, but there is a lot of inner reaction to what they were saying.
Yeah.
They got to know this ain't no normal human being. if this is what's happening.
Yeah.
Yeah, that didn't make them follow.
Not necessarily. I mean, some people were just glad to be healed and went home, right? Yeah.
I was telling our group, I just think it's hilarious that, they've seen him heal the mother-in-law, they've seen him drive out demons, they've seen him do all these works from people who've been ill in the community. And then he sits in the boat and he's like, come on, let's go throw the net. And he's like, oh, come on, we've been out there all night. And, it's just hilarious because I think God hits us over the head. God does miracles in our lives every single day, even if they're minuscule and very organic. And what it must be like for him to be God and be thinking, look, man, just get in the boat. There's a ton of fish out there and I want to bring them in for these folks. Just bear with me. But knowing that they've already seen all this stuff, and he still kind of pushes back a little bit, right? Then he has the big revelation when he's like, wow, he healed her, healed them, rebuked demons, filled our boat with fish. And he's like, I'm a sinner, man. You don't want to be around me. I'm not worthy.
Let's jump into that.
Well, I was going to say one quick thing on the first page to kind of tie into what Nancy was saying. I saw a little foreshadowing because when it says, immediately she rose and began to serve them, although it was a physical serving of the people that were in the house, I kind of saw that as some foreshadowing. The person that was actually healed or the action was done to immediately began to serve. And so you kind of see that later in the story too when Simon Peter is, the whole fish thing is something that he can relate to, then he immediately, and it actually goes back to the woman at the well, because as soon as she was touched by Christ, she immediately.
That's really interesting. That's good. Yeah.
Me too, they see all the things that are only he could do. And it seems like filling up a fish, or a net with fish, I don't know why that would make them.
That's a good question. What does fish have to do with sin? Isn't that a weird juxtaposition here? So the boats start filling up with fish. They have to call their partners, signal the partners, come over here. Our boat's sinking, by the way. And then Simon Peter saw it, and he fell down at Jesus' knees. Depart from me, for I am a sinful man. Why would he put a huge catch of fish and sin together? Well, good, Jeff.
The one thing we talked about how as it relates to what like what neurosurgeons do all day is incredible, but I don't know as an accountant, I don't know if that's incredible. So someone healing people doesn't have an impact on Simon Peter, but when it's something so he's a fisherman and seeing what happened, it's a huge impact. So if someone does something amazing in accounting, I'm like, oh my gosh. Yeah. So
like some numbers work.
Yeah. How do you get that balance sheet to balance? But
apart from me trying to say.
But it's that sometimes you're slow to recognize what's a miracle because you don't understand. It's not an area that you understand very well, so it's hard to judge whether that's incredible or not. But once it's an area you know what incredible is.
That's a really good insight right there, I think.
I think it was a cumulative effect. I think it was all those things, because we don't know what time period this is. Is this 24 hours? Is this 48 hours?
But it is interesting that Luke puts the story of his mother-in-law being healed right before this. Because in chapter 5, verse 1, it says, on one occasion. It's like these aren't necessarily connected chronologically. They're connected by Luke, it seems like to me.
Yeah.
So he's saying, okay, Peter's mother-in-law gets healed. All kinds of people get healed. But that doesn't seem to affect the disciples, the future disciples, like this thing affects them.
Well, I don't know, it's food, right? It's a big deal. They've been out there all night fishing and got nothing. They went out there and pretty soon they had more fish than they could even put in their boat. Maybe it's just the manifestation of abundance, right?
And it just seems to me like if you're a fisherman, you're going to have one great day of fishing too. You're going to one day you're going to fill your nets up and you're not going to think, oh my God, you're there.
Yeah.
And I bet it never happens in the daytime.
Yeah,
okay.
It might be there's something.
Yeah. What is the time aspect here? So, when's the best time to fish?
Morning, first thing in the morning.
First thing in the morning.
Yeah.
Depends on
If you try to get.
Well,
We have a great fisherman in Illinois, so I don't know if you know Jim Saylor knows everything there is about fishing. Maybe not in the Sea of Galilee yet. In the streams of Oregon.
So
If they jumped into that.
Like, this is his livelihood, so he goes out probably most days.
Yeah.
Day after day after day after day, he has not caught anything near that. And then at night, he catches squat. And so to have it be so much that it causes 2 boats to almost sink, that's like probably that's probably the only time it ever happens. I bet.
Trying to figure out if it's more of an act of causing astonishment because it's so like against natural laws of fishing, or if there's a sense of humiliation on his part that makes him feel.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Well, what is this? Again, what does sin have to do with fish?
Probably, like you were saying, that this is an area of his expertise. But he had never caught a catch like that.
No.
And probably never did again. And so that put him in a humble position because, hey, I'm the expert.
This is a carpenter, right?
Yeah.
What does he know about fishing?
We were saying that, it's like, he looks like them, he talks like them, he's been walking, they see him eat food.
Now, if this man at all, wouldn't his reaction be, hey Jesus, you and me, we could have one kind of fishing partnership. My gosh. Now,
He's way past that.
why not that kind of reaction?
Maybe he got it, that's what he said.
He basically says that when Simon Peter saw it, that's when he fell to his knees and he was astonished at the catch of the fish they had taken. So at that moment, he sees divinity. He's like, it's like hitting humans over the head with a hammer. He realizes he's God. He realizes there's something more to this than just him being, it was a lucky stroke, right? To go out there at that moment, or she gets healed at that moment. And this is divinity.
Have you had a moment of astonishment, just in anything? Can you think of a moment you were astonished? Anybody want to share that? I have one if nobody else does.
Yeah, go for it.
So, I was sitting at my computer a number of months ago. Anyway, this is, I opened a file and said, this is the largest file ever created, and it's over 1 billion pixels. I thought that's kind of interesting. I think I will open this up. This is something I haven't seen before. It's the largest file ever created by humanity.
Nice camera.
Yeah. Now it's not going to be that impressive for you here. What happened was the Hubble telescope, a number of years ago, like in the early 2000s, it put its lens on a little teeny speck of the cosmos. And they call it the deep field photos. And it photographed pictures. And then 10 years after that, in I think 2014, it did the same thing, and it had additional capability. And so it did the same thing. I was looking at this thing. Initially, I thought those were stars, because I was sitting in front of my computer, and then it just came to my mind, I'm not looking at stars, I'm looking at galaxies. And I just sat back. I just remember the moment. It's like, oh my gosh. Those are galaxies, those aren't stars. That is a teeny speck of the universe that they're looking at, and they're not stars, they're galaxies.
Yeah.
I was so taken back, and it was probably the most astonished I can ever remember being. And the thing that also came to my mind at that point was, not only is God incredibly awesome, because they figured out that he didn't just create 100 billion galaxies, which was the first count. Then it was 200 billion galaxies. Then it was 2 trillion galaxies in the known universe now that they figure exists. And those are just a few of them. You think of the size of a galaxy? Oh my gosh. There's 2 trillion stars, I think, in each galaxy, something like that. It's off the charts.
Infinite, right? It's
Yeah.
like infinite, yeah.
The other thing that came to my mind as I sat back in my chair is that that's also a picture of God's holiness. It's that huge. It's just enormous. His justice, His holiness, His personhood. And who am I in the presence of that? I think that's a little bit what Peter got a taste of there. Who am I in the presence of this thing? Of this person, this image here, you know, this immensity.
I have an astonishing moment I just thought about that I should share because it really was astonishing. So my son-in-law's appendix broke or burst, and he was in surgery. He was septic. It was horrible. His organs were shutting down. It was really, really awful. And we were in this little room at the hospital, and there was this one little lamp on it. I think it's like a family room, right? And he'd been there for quite a while, and the doctors, they were saying, you know, you've got to let this kid go. You got to let him go. And his parents were just amazing Christians. All the sister-in-laws and everybody had come in. They were all in this room, and his grandmother was this little woman, and I was sitting right by the door. And of course, everybody's just, I mean, it's one of the worst things I've ever gone through in my life. And I was raised Catholic. I accepted Christ when I was 18. And so the little grandmother says, my grandson needs to be anointed with oil. And I mean, I know this sounds terrible of me, but I was raised Catholic, so I'm going, oh man, we're in Sacred Heart Hospital. That's not going to happen. You know, we're in a Catholic hospital, and there was, within 60 seconds, there was a knock at the door. And I opened the door, and there's this guy in a suit, and he said, I was told that I'm needed here. And I opened the door, and the grandmother said, are you a pastor? And he said, yes. And she said, and I have goosebumps. She was like, can you do an anointing of oil? He said, I've got some oil in my office right now, and I've been studying it. And they went up to that kid's room and sang hymns at his bed. I felt like my feet weren't touching the ground. And within like 16 hours, he started to recover. But I mean, to think that there'd be a pastor in the hospital with oil knocks on our door 60 seconds after she says that. And I was thinking, man, I don't pray enough. These people are connected. I mean, no, because these people are way beyond what my expectation of. I mean, I'm serious. They knew, they were reading the Bible without even looking at it. They could just say everything in it. And I've never been able to do that. But it was pretty amazing. Yeah. He survived, but then unfortunately he died about 8 months later. He just died from all the complications. But he did survive that incident. Yeah, that oil came right to our door. Yeah, almost a big moment.
So experiences of astonishment. Well, maybe this is a little of what Peter felt here, that he was blown away.
Yeah.
Anything else that you guys saw here that you thought was kind of interesting?
The only thing, I just saw a thing that's kind of a tangent, really, but Jesus, it says he went away to get away from it. He would do that once in a while, he was kind of, he went to a desolate place, it says in verse 42. And he had to get away once in a while, because I'm sure it was draining sometimes, all that he had to do. And look at us today, oh man.
Well, he probably was praying there, right?
Yeah.
The interesting thing is what happens before and what happens after that desolate place experience. Before, you've got all these people who are just thrilled about the fact of him healing and exorcising demons, and they are trying to take every waking moment and sleeping moment that he might have, right? Then he goes to a desolate place, he gets his priorities back in order, maybe. And he comes out with this statement, I must preach but he said to them, I've got to leave you basically, because I must preach the good news of the kingdom to other towns as well, for I was sent for this purpose. So it seems like even Jesus, he had to reconnect with his Father to kind of reorient what his priorities really were. And they weren't just healing and exorcising demons. They were beyond that. It was communicating the good news about God, what his mission was.
So I've always wondered something. Do you think he, as a child, he knew he was God, or he had some recollection of, because I was thinking about that, he lived amongst us, so he would know our trials and tribulations.
That's beyond this passage, Nancy. I'm not sure.
No, but I thought you might have some insight.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure I do it.
Okay. But you just wondered, right? Did he know he was God?
It's hard to say. He certainly had a sense of, he took Peter's adulation as, that's a fact, but what was his response to Peter? Let's look at that. What do you see here?
Where it says, do not be afraid.
What do you think of that connection of the catching men and the fishing thing?
There's this definite connection.
Okay.
Is it what?
Definite
No,
connection.
Oh, you did?
I was just thinking that part of, I think, what humbled Peter was that he thought that he knew the fishing business, and Jesus showed him how much he didn't know and had control over it. And Jesus said, don't worry, don't be afraid. I've got a business for you that's better. Basically, I'm going to give you bigger catch, things to catch that are bigger and better.
I really like the way that's put. I got a bigger business for you. Now think about it. We all have a job, right? Basically, we have our thing that we do to make money. But I think Jesus is saying, I've got a bigger business for you, and I think maybe we could broaden that out to us as well. I've got a vocation for you, or an avocation for you. You've got a job, that's cool, but you also have an avocation. And that's a better business. It's a bigger deal. It involves a lot more things that are of great importance. That kind of strikes me, I guess, as a business person. Like, I can really easily get caught up in those business pursuits, and yet I wonder if there's a greater business that's calling.
So what was the fear of Peter? Why did Jesus go? That was something we were kind of talking about. I still don't quite get it. Why did he say, don't be afraid? What was he seeing that Peter would be afraid of right there?
Well,
Everybody who's ever seen God has been afraid.
Well, when he said, depart from me, for I am a simple man, Lord, I bet his nonverbal communication was of fear. Because he was like, oh my gosh, I don't deserve to be around you. I would see fear as being a natural part of that.
Yeah, but in the Old Testament, they're always afraid when they see God or they hear him. They're always like, oh man.
Yeah.
They're always afraid.
Hey, Jay, you guys have one?
Yeah, I feel like also we kind of talked about in our group too that Simon Peter's been around Jesus and he's seen these things, and this is the moment that Jesus actually shows him. And so while he may have, believed that Jesus was this great prophet or rabbi or whatever, this is the moment that really clicks for him that says, oh my gosh, he actually is the Messiah. And so maybe in his heart he was doubting a little bit, not necessarily fully doubting, but just not fully convinced until that point. And then, so I guess his heart wasn't fully pure. Does that make sense?
Yeah, he comes to grips with who Jesus is at this moment in his life.
And so he may have not felt worthy because he may have had a little bit of doubt. So
maybe because when you see who you are in relationship to who God is, There is no way to feel worthy. Yeah. It gets back to this thing right here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a couple thoughts on that. So just looking at the first part of this study, with the part of Peter right here, there seems to be a parallel of Jesus personally touching people. I mean, whether it's physically touching them to heal them, or personally touching a specific area in their life that gets their attention. So there seems to be this aspect of him speaking quite directly to, or directly touching a certain issue that grabs the attention. And then just in regards to that line, do not be afraid from now on, you will be catching men. I kind of like that it sticks to the same imagery of fishing. To me, it suggests that they can still they're still fishermen in a sense, but there's an enlarged perspective that it's not just about the fish, and maybe that's kind of where Peter's mind was before this. And then when Jesus kind of summons this huge load of fish, I imagine that Peter's reaction is very much it's kind of like when you encounter someone who's so much better than you at something, and it's like, what's the point of doing this when this other thing is possible?
Yeah, and yet Jesus, the interesting thing, you go back to, I must preach the good news of the kingdom to other towns. And then the very last verse that we saw here, and when they had brought their boats to land, they left everything and followed him. Oh, I guess he's going to take some people to help him do his mission. That's kind of cool. And boy, the value, here's common fishermen. Think about it. I mean, we look back on it and said, oh yeah, of course. But they're just common fishermen. And he raises the level of their dignity to say, you're going to hang around with me, and you're not going to just be fishers of fish, you're going to be fishers of people. Now, let's do one more thing here. Personally, take a couple minutes. And on page 26 is this question. There's a couple kind of cool questions here. The first one says, have you ever seen God really show up? Nancy kind of described that situation. But the third question down is the one I want us to look at. Where is Jesus in relation to your fishing business? I.e. essential and important area of your life, like your job, your studies, your family, your money, your finances, your relationship with another person, etc. Check one of the following. Nowhere in sight, on the horizon, approaching the boat, 1 foot in, 1 foot out, fully in. Think of a central area of your life. Something that's really critical to you, that you wrap your life around. It's really important, and it's different, I'm sure, for all of us, but what's key for you? And then where is Jesus in relationship to that thing? Or that relationship, possibly. So take a minute, just think about what that is, and then if you want to, go ahead and check one of those things. And then we're just going to talk as a group to end this up a little bit in your small groups, like just kind of what that thing is for you.
So the 1 foot in and the 1 foot out, is that Jesus or is that me?
That's Jesus. Is he 1 foot in? So he's either nowhere in sight, he's on the horizon, approaching your boat. He's got 1 foot in and 1 foot out, or he's fully in. Right.
I feel like that's me. I'm not in the boat yet.
Yeah.
I'm 1 foot in and 1 foot out.
We can look at it from either perspective if you want. I hope this is kind of fun. I'm going to show one more video. This is another rendition of the same story. As a matter of fact, this one's done by Mark Burnett. He did the Survivor and the Apprentice and all that. And this is from the Bible. Touched by an Angel was his wife. Anyway, so they did a lot of research, and the Bible is very well done, and the New Testament part of it is quite good, I think. It's gripping. But I'm not sure about this particular scene. You tell me what you think. I just got to know, you thought after studying that passage, what you thought about that rendition. I mean, it's kind of curious. We don't necessarily have to pick it apart, but let's go ahead and pick it apart.
Yeah, I thought I missed the points.
Peter was a little more snarky. Yeah.
Okay, Peter was a little snarky, all right. What happened to James and John and Andrew, by the way? Yeah, they weren't there.
It didn't really show that Peter was like convinced. Even at the, it's kind of like it was Jesus kind of still leading it at the end, not Peter being like, oh my gosh, I'm going to drop everything and follow you. He was kind of like still in disbelief at the end.
Okay. And it wasn't that really astonishment. Okay, yeah, there was a huge catch of fish, but there was no depart from me for I'm a sinful man kind of thing at all, was there?
Is that the end of it? It doesn't, there's
In
nothing
that
after
story,
that?
yeah.
Oh, okay, okay. It's definitely less is more.
But that
Kind of Hollywood twist to it.
That music.
yeah, we're going to change the world. That's not what he said. But that's what he meant, really. But, it was, he didn't need to say it like that.
I think that Jesus, like when he flopped into the boat, it kind of almost.
That was a fun thing to find.
I know. You didn't have to hear something.
That's actually the part I like the best.
Yeah.
It was kind of like, that's probably what would have happened, He just flopped in. He doesn't levitate over the boat and drop in. He flops it like we would do. That's actually my favorite part. This is kind of funny. Once you kind of read the real thing, you can start to evaluate. I mean, it's really a good series. I just think this story was kind of missed.
The less is more. Yeah, I think they tried to make it more dramatic about the miracle than it was about the nuances of what happened.
Yeah.
Well, it wasn't even that big of a miracle. They had them on nice little baskets.
Right.
The boat wasn't quite sinking.
Right. Yeah.
It was just setting up what's to happen next. It wasn't about that story. It's like what's going to happen next.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's good point. Well, let's close in prayer. Right? Thank you, Lord, for a good time together to study this passage, and just be reminded that you have a bigger business for us. We think what we're into, what our priorities revolve around, what's important to us, is so central, and yet you want to expand that for each one of us, and help us to have eyes to see how you want to expand and make the real business of the kingdom of God grow in our life, become exciting. I just think of the end here where Peter was afraid, and yet Jesus, you couldn't keep him there because there was something to be excited about, not to be fearful about. And we just pray that we too could pursue a sense of following you with excitement. So thank you for our time together.